Hey there YouTube, Wrestling Optimus here, back with another unboxing video. It's been a little while since I've done one of these, and I've accumulated quite a few figures over that time. Unfortunately, there isn't a theme across all the figures like I've tried to do in the past, but I did notice 4, let's call them themed pairs across the figures we're going to be opening up today. Anyway, enough talk, let's just get unboxing. This first pair I'm calling the upgrades because, well, I'm upgrading my current figures to these new figures. And the first one of these is going to be Jungle Boy's new figure. This is number 97 as part of Series 11. And before we talk about the new figure, let's take a look at the old figure. Now I must admit right away, the old figure's head sculpt is like identical to Jungle Boy, and the new one leaves a lot to be desired. But he also looks kind of confused, and with his recent heel turn, I wanted some darker attire and a more serious face, even if it doesn't necessarily look like him. So we're switching over to this red attire, and this kind of snake pattern, I guess, on it. Alright, let's set him aside, and we're gonna take a look at the box here. As you saw, we get an extra head. And this is part of a series with Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian. I have thought about getting those figures, but honestly, they don't look too good. There's also an Adam Cole and yet another Darby Allin and Chris Jericho. Speaking of Darby Allin, the picture is from his battle with Jungle Boy on Dynamite during one of the pandemic shows down in Jacksonville, Florida. Specifically, this was April 21st, 2021. Alright, let's spin it back around, and then let's let it breathe. Full transparency, although I do think the figure is kind of a downgrade, as I've already mentioned, especially that janky head sculpt, I'm not too bothered because I got this figure on clearance during Ringside Collectibles 4th of July sale. And interestingly enough, I was shopping on there because the 4th of July is actually my birthday. Tell me how old you think I am down there in the comments. Before we take a look at the figure, as always, we take a look at the accessories first. We got 2 fist hands here. There we go, pretty standard fists, as opposed to the open hands we have back here on the figures. The other extra is a shouting head sculpt, which you can see right there. Again, not only is the face off, but the hair's not as good. Like, look at the hair back here on the old figure. I mean, the guy is literally known for his incredible hair and his good looks that he got from his father. But this new figure is, well, just kind of scary. He's got these really wide open eyes, and again, the hair is just not as cool. I don't know, it just seems more basic, I guess. So honestly, considering that the only thing I really care about is this new gear, why don't we just swap the heads? Yeah, there we go. That is a good Jungle Boy figure. I really don't know what they were doing with that other head sculpt. Now, if this was your first Jungle Boy figure, I guess it'll do, but I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 10. One of the lowest scores I've ever given a figure. It really looks bad. But what's great about AEW figures is you can change the heads and hands out really easily. So there you go, we were still able to make an upgrade. The other figure we're upgrading today is over in WWE, and it's the Man Becky Lynch. This is actually one of 2 figures we're going to be looking at today that my friend bought me at a clearance store. And that's what this tag is. I tried my best to get it off so you can see her face, but obviously I wasn't 100% successful. Doesn't really matter though, we're throwing the packaging out in a second here. And just like we did with Jungle Boy, let's take a look at the figure it's going to be replacing, and that's this much older style Becky Lynch from her steampunk days. I believe this originally came with a top hat as well, and don't get me wrong, it's a great figure, but her entire aesthetic has changed since then. So it's time to upgrade to the man/big time Bex persona, and this was when she had the SmackDown Women's Championship. That was recently changed to the Women's World Championship and is currently held by Rhea Ripley, but we won't go into all that nonsense. Either way, I have a bunch of Raw Women's Championships and only one SmackDown Women's Championship, so it'll be good to have a second one. I really like this white outfit with the black jacket, and I'm excited to see what that looks like once we get the figure out of the packaging. This is part of Series 100 of the Elite Collection. And if we spin it around, the other figures in this collection include Andre the Giant, Rey Mysterio, The Rock, John Cena, and stunning Steve Austin before he became Stone Cold. Then we get a little blurb up here talking about her rise to fame and becoming Becky Two Belts at WrestleMania. Oh, I'm also interested in seeing that backsplash, but in order to do so, we have to let her breathe. Just as I thought, that backsplash is really cool, but first let's take a look at the accessories here. Just like Jungle Boy, we have a couple of fists, pretty standard, and here is the Women's Championship, very shiny. However, the first thing I noticed right out of the box was this jacket. Looking at it through the packaging window, I thought it was going to be fabric, but it's actually rubber. And if I can get the camera to focus, you'll see that it's covered in these really cool studs. There we go, and while we're zoomed in, might as well show off this great braid up here in her hair. So that's another really cool detail, spinning her around. Her face looks just like Becky, unlike that Jungle Boy figure. And this outfit looks just like one that she would wear in the modern times, as opposed to that steampunk look on my current figure. Moving down, she's got some white fishnets into her white boots with red stripes. The legs do flail out a little bit awkwardly, as happens with a lot of these WWE women's figures, and that's just because of how this joint goes into their hip. It is different than the men, and I'm not exactly sure how to fix it, but yeah, it does give a weird appearance to the women. The one problem with these rubber clothes is that it makes the figures really hard to pose, so let's take this off real quick. Much better, and by the way, those rubber clothes also don't slide down plastic arms very easily. Anyway, this is a really nice figure. It looks just like Becky, it's got upgraded clothing, it has accessories including a belt and extra hands. We even got a sick new backsplash. I can't exactly pinpoint a fault, but it's also not a perfect figure, so we're gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Our next pairing is what I'm calling the Legends because, well, they come from the WWE Legends series. This also happens to be the other figure that my friend bought for me at that clearance store, and luckily they put their tag up here this time so it was much easier to get off. Now it says first time in the line, but I find it really hard to believe there's never been a Stacy Keibler Mattel figure before. I know for a fact that Jakks Pacific and a couple other companies made figures, but I guess she left the business before Mattel took over making WWE's action figures. Regardless, we have the standard WWE Legends backsplash. She also comes with 2 finger-pointing hands and an alternative head sculpt. And finally, we get a clipboard, which might be useful in figure photography later on. Spinning the box around, this is part of Series 15, which also included Kane, Lex Luger, and X-Pac. Now, I know for a fact I have this X-Pac, and I might actually have this Kane as well. But yes, as this blurb points out, Stacy Keibler was incredibly attractive. Specifically, they always highlighted her legs. That's why she always wore these short skirts and dresses. She was known as Miss Hancock in WCW, before getting her real name in WWE. But the real reason I wanted this figure is because Stacy Keibler was just inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame back at WrestleMania this year. And I figured they might use her on camera moving forward, so I might as well have a figure. And with all of that said, let's let her breathe. Here she is, Miss Hancock / Stacy Keibler. As always, the first thing we'll do is point out the pointing hands. That is different than the mic holding hands that she seems to have there. Another thing that I actually didn't notice in the packaging is this pair of glasses. I put them here on the second head sculpt so you can see them a little bit better. Honestly, they don't look that great when they're fully on, and the plastic hair makes it hard to put them fully on, but they look pretty good slid down her nose a little bit there. Kind of gives off the sexy librarian vibe, as does this bun, which is different than the long hair that she has on the main figure here. So yeah, you can always swap it out for that kind of sexy librarian look. Still, she looks plenty sexy with her hair down. I will point out that I have a couple of figures who wear high heels, Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of one of my Lana figures, as well as a Scarlet Bordeaux figure, and they're all pretty notorious for being difficult to stand up. Guess what? This one is no exception. That's why I'm kinda having to lean her against the backdrop when I put her back here, but for now, let's bring it up close and take a look at the detailing. Here we can see the difference in the head sculpts between the long hair and the bun. And then the outfit moves down here. It's just a simple black women's business suit, but the detailing is pretty good on like the buttons and pockets and things like that. We're gonna get rid of this backdrop real quick because the camera keeps focusing on that instead of the figure. Anyway, as I alluded to earlier, here we see that really short skirt, which of course shows off those legendary legs. Spinning it around, there's not much detailing on the back there, but we do have this cool white collar up here between her hair. Again, sometimes it is difficult to get those glasses on these figures that have the long hair. I learned that with Sasha Banks' glasses as well as Becky Lynch's goggles, but unlike some of those other figures, this looks pretty good without the glasses. By the way, here's the clipboard. It's pretty standard, but nice to have in the collection of accessories. So overall, the figure looks pretty good, even if a little bit simplistic, and if it doesn't stand up necessarily that well. It did come with extra hands, an extra head sculpt, and a few accessories. I am going to be a little bit unfair and dock her a point because she's not an active wrestler, and I'm not going to get to use this figure too often. Judge me if you want, but that's going to bring the score down to a 7 out of 10. Still a really good figure, especially if you're a fan of Stacy Keibler, but try and get it on clearance like I did. Next up is another legend. This time it's Paul E. Dangerously, better known as Paul Heyman. Now, I already have a Paul Heyman figure that you may have seen me use in some other videos, and I'm probably going to keep using this one because, you know, it's older, he's balding, and it's more realistic to how he looks now. But as an old school ECW fan, I really wanted to get this figure commemorating his old personality. Now, I do find it interesting that they included the ECW hat because that hat is more associated with this figure when he was wearing the long black coat and was in charge of ECW. Paul E. Dangerously, on the other hand, with the iconic 80s cell phone and wearing a suit, that is more associated with his days in WCW managing the Dangerous Alliance. So yeah, the hat doesn't really make much sense, but let's face it, I bought the figure for the phone. This is as iconic as Jimmy Hart's megaphone or Jim Cornette's tennis racket. It's the gimmick that got him over in the business in the first place. This is part of Series 18, and that includes Fatu and Samu. Fatu, of course, would go on to become Rikishi, and the immortal Hulk Hogan, although there's a billion of him out there, so I'm not sure why we needed yet another figure for him. Regardless, the blurb here says what I just kind of mentioned. In the early 1990s, WCW had a manager of a new faction called the Dangerous Alliance, which, by the way, included stunning Steve Austin, who we saw a figure for back with Stacy Keibler. Anyway, not much else to say other than Paul E. Dangerously, let's let him breathe. Okay, here is the figure, and let's start by talking about the accessories. First, that baseball cap, as I mentioned earlier, doesn't make sense because he was in WCW at the time. It also looks really stupid and ill-fitting, although it technically does fit on his head. And this is a problem I've found with pretty much every action figure baseball cap. As I take it off, I will say the suit looks really good and there are a ton of articulations on this figure. But continuing with the accessories, he also came with a pair of fist hands, and he came with the corresponding pointer hand and open fist that goes with the hands already on the figure. Although the hair looks like the slicked back look that he had at the time, that face sculpt does need a little bit of work. One super tiny detail I noticed is that he only has the top button of his jacket button. This is how men actually wear their suit jackets, even though for some reason, on most figures that have a suit, all the buttons are done. So like I said, super small detail, but I appreciate it. And now, what I admit is the primary reason I got the figure, the cell phone. Setting the figure down for a second, here's what's really disappointing. The phone apparently comes apart, and in my reckless opening of the package, I seem to have lost the antenna. So that really sucks, but nonetheless, this is a really cool detailed phone. You can see each of the individual buttons there. And we have a nice little display screen because yes, kids, back then the only thing you saw on the screen was the number you were attempting to dial. This is a far cry from today's smartphones. It was also clunky enough to literally be used as a weapon, which Paul E. Dangerously famously did. So let's put that phone into his hand, we'll bring it up to his face. And yeah, again, I am disappointed that I seem to have lost the antenna. Maybe I'll find it eventually. Taking a look at the figure itself, I love the detailing on this pink and black tie here. There's also really nice detailing on his dress shoes there. And then not much to say about the back other than there is his original long hair. Kind of had a mullet look going before the bald spot developed. And yeah, with the nice articulations and the suit, the accessories, including that famous phone, I'm gonna dock it a little bit for the face sculpt. And another point because this ECW hat confuses me so much, and that's gonna bring this down to an 8 out of 10. Well, wouldn't you know, the second I set him aside, I found the antenna. To make a long story short, it rolled under the couch. Either way, yay for completed phone. Moving on, our next pair of figures is gonna be the new to the line figures, and this is Bronson Reed. Honestly, he kinda looks like Taz, but I am excited to get this open and see this really cool jacket he's got on, as well as take a look at that singlet. But spinning this around, it's really nice whenever somebody's first figure is an elite as opposed to a basic, and Bronson Reed here got that treatment. He is a former North American champion down there in NXT, and this series also included Randy Orton, Jey Uso, Mustafa Ali, an old school big boss man, and Reckoning aka Mia Yim. Like a surprising number of superstars in recent history, he is from Australia. This is where current WWE superstars Grayson Waller and Rhea Ripley are also from. I believe Dakota Kai is either from Australia or New Zealand. Former women's tag team champions, the Iconics, are also from Australia. And so are current AEW wrestlers Tony Storm and Buddy Matthews. So yeah, the Aussies are kind of invading the North American scene at the moment. Regardless, Bronson's been getting a ton of TV time lately, so I'm really excited to let him breathe. And here he is, the master of the tsunami. I really like the hands that it comes with by default because you're able to do this outstretched palm pose that he does, but it also came with 2 mic holding hands as well. And let's just get this out of the way, in addition to the head sculpt kinda looking like Taz, the whole body is giving me serious Bam Bam Bigelow vibes. That's not necessarily a bad thing, I'm just saying. And the reason I'm saying that is because this jacket has these kind of flames that look very similar to the pattern that Bam Bam was known for. Unlike that Becky Lynch jacket earlier, which was rubber, this is that fabric material. Generally speaking, I do prefer that to the rubber, but they both do have their advantages and disadvantages. Coming down here, it looks like we have a tattoo. We'll take a deeper look later once I get the jacket off. And he has some basic black boots, black knee pads. The back of the jacket, though, is really cool. It's got this skull and crossbones, just like on the front of his singlet here. And yeah, let's get this jacket off so we can see the singlet a little bit better. Oh yeah, not only is the singlet really cool, but he has these great elbow pads and this really awesome Samoan tattoo on his forearm. The singlet itself has that skull and crossbones on the front here, as well as this cool splash pattern. The strap goes up over that tattoo and comes onto the back. More of that splash pattern. And here's the really cool hair that makes him look a little bit different than Taz. So overall, I'm really loving this figure. I will say an extra article of clothing and some extra hands isn't really the accessories that I'm looking for out of an elite. That'd be great for a basic, but I'm looking for a little bit more with these. especially given the additional price point. But I'm not going to dock it too much because the figure itself is so good. In fact, I'm going to go with a 9 out of 10. The second in our pair of first time in the line is Rock Boogs. I have really been looking forward to this one, and if I recall correctly, I got the Chase variant, but I'm not totally sure, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong down there in the comments. I have been a huge fan of Boogs ever since he was Eric Bugenhagen down in NXT. He had one match where he came out rocking an air guitar so hard he became an instant meme overnight, and then we didn't see him for years. But he did eventually get called up to the main roster where we found out that he can actually play guitar. And as a guitarist myself, I must say, he's really good. So of course, in addition to these rock hands up here, we get his Flying V guitar. Interestingly, I've always wanted a Flying V, they're so cool. However, before we open him up and check this out, this is part of Series 98, which also includes another Demon Balor, Randy Orton, Big E, a really good Mandy Rose I've definitely thought about getting, and Farouk Assad. That's Farouk's original gimmick before he formed the Nation of Domination, which of course gave us Mark Henry, D'Lo Brown, and The Rock. Boogs recently came back from injury, and it appears that he's not going to be working with Shinsuke Nakamura anymore, but he did cut his hair, so here's hoping that's part of a repackaging and a push. Speaking of packaging, let's take him out of the packaging and let him breathe. In addition to these awesome rock fists, like I was pointing out, we also got regular fists. But the default hands are open fists, traditionally called mic holding hands because they're used to hold microphones, but in this case they work really well to hold the neck of the guitar and kind of look like he's holding a pick. If we bring him up a little bit closer, you'll see not only does it have this really awesome strap on the guitar, you can see it right there, but also if we bring it around to the front again, you'll see that the guitar actually breaks, kind of like Elias's acoustic guitar. So that is really cool. We have a fantastic head sculpt with his awesome smiling face, that great bandana, and this really great side ponytail. Oops, apparently that comes off. That's cool, because now he looks like his current gimmick. So we'll just pop that back on, but that is really awesome. There is a hole, so that is definitely intentional. His blue overalls here say, "Let's ride." And they got this cool red trim. Going down to the bottom, he also has blue knee pads and really nice white with black trim sneakers. Spinning it around to the back, it says RB for Rock Boogs and then Boogs Cruise, which is his finishing move. I really like the tiny detailing, like this belt going through a belt loop here. And if we bring it back around to the front, you'll see how it connects on the front part of the guitar as well. And yeah, I am absolutely loving this figure. We got an amazing accessory in this guitar. There's a great head sculpt with a removable ponytail. The gear looks incredible, and we got rock hands. Pretty easy grade here. It's a 10 out of 10. Oh no, he's booging out! Ah! And finally, we come to our last pair of the day, which kind of makes this the worst unboxing ever because we are not going to be opening up either one of these figures. I'll explain why as we go, but this first one is Johnny Knoxville. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the video that my birthday was on July 4th, and I challenged you to guess my age down there in the comments. Well, here's a huge hint. I'm a peak millennial who was an adolescent boy when Jackass was at its most popular. So I absolutely love me some Johnny Knoxville, and I couldn't believe when they brought him into WWE to have a match at WrestleMania with Sami Zayn. I was even more excited, albeit a little trepidatious, when I found out it was going to be a Jackass match. But it turned out to be incredible. I know goofy wrestling isn't for everyone, cough cough looking at you, Jim Cornette, but if it's done right, it's absolutely for me. And this was done right. From the involvement of all the other Jackass guys to the oversized props and the wacky prank-style spots, including a finish that involved a giant mousetrap. It was honestly some of the most fun I've had watching wrestling in a long time. And kudos to Johnny for taking some gnarly bumps, especially at his age, which he is showing with this glorious gray hair. But yeah, since he's probably never coming back to WWE, at least not to wrestle, I've decided to keep this figure in the box and put it up on display. With that said, I'm very annoyed because one of the hands is up here in his armpit instead of down here where it belongs. And since I'm not opening it up, I can't fix that. But whatever. In addition to the extra hands, it also comes with his goggles that you can see a little bit better in the picture here, and he has his silver cape on. The figure itself looks really cool, and that face sculpt looks immaculate. Not sure if the camera's really picking it up, but it looks just like Johnny Knoxville. The picture on the back is of course from that match at WrestleMania 38, and I love how even his statistics on the box are funny. His weight is 2 cheeseburgers away from 175 pounds, and his finisher is the giant mousetrap. I totally forgot about this spot, but yes, he also used 2 trash can lids as symbols on Sami Zayn's head, and I think there might have even been a pie to the face involved. But anyway, this is part of Series 101, which also includes the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes. I think that's one of the first Cody Rhodes figures since he's been back. Another Kevin Owens, the Mr. America version of Hulk Hogan, yet another Hogan figure, a really nice looking Ricochet, and an upgraded Sonya Deville. Like I said, I'm not going to be opening this up, so there's not much else to say other than I really like the figure from what I can see of it. It comes with some fun accessories, and it looks just like Johnny. Sometimes I'm not a fan of these one-off celebrity figures, but in this case, I love it just because of my love for Jackass. So for purely nostalgia reasons, it's getting a 10 out of 10. And finally, for my aforementioned birthday, I got to go to the Icons of Wrestling convention down at the ECW Arena in South Philly. You'll notice by my intro video that I got to meet Matt Cardona, the former Zack Ryder in WWE, and the absolute king of wrestling action figure collecting. So that was really amazing, and a big thanks to him for giving me that shout out. The other incredible person that I got to meet was fitting because it was in the ECW arena. It's ECW Original, the Blue Meanie. And this is his brand new action figure. He told me it just came out. It's from FC Toys, which I'm not familiar with, but it is an officially licensed product. And you know, because I met him and he signed it. Now there are 2 versions of this figure. The other one has a white shirt instead of the blue shirt, but seeing as he's in the Blue World Order, I thought he had to have the blue shirt. He is the Blue Meanie after all. Now I'm gonna lift the camera up a little bit so you can see that it says the action is back, bone crushing wrestlers. Now I'm not exactly sure what that means, but based on his description, there's these kind of hard pieces inside the arms and legs that crunch when you bend them. Now, because this is signed, he's probably never going to be on TV again, and it doesn't match with either my Mattel WWE or my Jazzwares AEW figures. I see no reason to open this up, which also means, unfortunately, we're not going to find out what that bone-crunching action actually is like. But we can still spin it around and see what the back looks like. It appears that this is part of Series 1, which, in addition to Blue Meanie, includes Brian Clark, the former Atom Bomb, Dwayne Gill, aka Gilberg, an interesting Macho Man Randy Savage, Sonny Ono, who I'm not too familiar with, and Ultimo Dragon, who, strangely enough, I actually already have a figure for. And let's read this description to find out what that bone-crunching action is all about. You can create your own body slamming, pile driving, headbutting, clothesline, and fight to the finish with FC Toys bone-crushing wrestlers. Each figure features lifelike detail and bone-crushing abilities. To hear the bone-crushing sound effect, gently bend the knee or elbow joints forward and backwards, as shown by the arrow. Do not try to bend the joints from side to side, as this will result in permanent damage to the figure. Oh, and get this, not all figures feature bone-crunching ability. Well then, I'm starting to understand why this was produced by a guy named Jack Slime. Whatever, maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh, but I just feel like that kind of borders on false advertising. Either way, I was more or less right about the bone-crushing effect, and it's pretty cool that that is in these figures. It's also just really nice to have an ECW original like the Blue Meanie sign his figure, and at some point I am going to find a place to display all of these figures that I still have in boxes. I do have a set of display shelves. You can check out the video of me building it somewhere on this channel, but it's completely full right now, so I think I'm going to have to build some new ones to display all these new figures. Alright, and that is going to do it for today. Let me know what you think of all these figures down in the comments, and if you liked the video, make sure to do all that normal YouTube stuff. Smash the like button, share with any wrestling or action figure fans you may know, subscribe to the channel, and spread the word. You can also talk to me over on Twitter at WrestlingOptimus, or see all my best figure photography over on Instagram at WrestlingOptimus. If you haven't seen my new intro video featuring Matt Cardona and the Blue Meanie, you can check that out right here. But until next time, I've been Wrestling Optimus, and I'll catch you later.